When you think about history's biggest world-changing catastrophes, you probably picture some kind of grand, evil plan. But the truth is, they almost never start that way. More often than not, they start with something small, a miscalculation, a moment of pride, just a simple, everyday screw-up. And today, we're going to figure out why.
I mean, that sounds completely insane, right? How on earth does such a tiny event lead to such an unbelievable outcome? Well, it turns out history is just littered with these moments, these tiny little triggers that set off enormous change.
We're all taught to think about history as these big, sweeping forces and inevitable trends. But in this explainer, we're going to look past all that. We're going to dig into the small, sometimes downright embarrassing blunders that, when the conditions were just right, spiraled into absolute, world-changing disasters.
So what are those conditions? Because, let's be honest, not every mistake ends in total catastrophe. To really get why some do, we need to basically dissect the anatomy of these disasters. We need to find the pattern that turns a simple whoops into something that can bring down an empire.
Okay, first, let's get our terms straight. We're talking about what we'll call an expensive mistake. Now, this isn't about whether someone meant to do harm. It's all about the sheer scale of the fallout. It's an error that's so big or hits at just the right spot that the system around it, whether that's an empire, an organization, whatever, it just can't handle it. It can't absorb the shock.
And that seems to happen when three specific conditions are met. First, you've got leverage. The mistake happens at a really critical time and place, a weak point. Second, amplification. Instead of dampening the mistake, the system actually makes it bigger. It magnifies it. And third, no correction. For whatever reason, pride, politics, bureaucracy, nobody can hit the brakes. Let's see how this actually plays.
All right, now let's put this little framework to the test. We're going to apply it to three totally different moments in history. We're talking an ancient empire, a world war, and the space race. And we're going to see how this exact same dangerous pattern shows up every single time. Okay, so let's start way back in the 13th century. Genghis Khan is busy building one of the biggest empires in history, and he decides to send a trade mission to his very powerful neighbor, the Khwarezmian Empire. He's looking for peace, for trade. What he gets is something very, very different. And right here, you can just see it all go wrong in slow motion. First, Khan's merchants are straight up executed. He tries to take the high road. He sends official diplomats to demand justice. And the Shah's response? He kills one of the envoys and, just to add insult to injury, shaves the beards off the others. A massive sign of disrespect. This wasn't just a bad move. It was a screaming declaration that diplomacy was dead. A huge mistake at a point of maximum leverage. And the price of that insult? It's just staggering. Genghis Khan unleashes one of the most brutal invasions in human history. The entire Khwarezmian Empire was completely wiped off the map. Cities were leveled, populations were slaughtered. The whole course of history in Asia was changed forever, all because one ruler decided to humiliate a messenger. Now let's fast forward 700 years to 1914. This is a story a lot of us think we know, but when you look at it through our framework, you see that same scary pattern all over again. Archduke Franz Ferdinand is visiting Sarajevo, and the stage is set for a world-changing accident. I mean, the whole day was just a cascade of tiny errors. First, a bomb attempt fails. Then, the Archduke changes his travel plans on the fly. And then comes the crucial mistake. His driver takes a wrong turn. The car stalls right in front of one of the assassins, Gavrilo Princip, who had totally given up and was just getting a sandwich. In that one moment, a tiny random error created the perfect fatal opportunity. Now, this is the really important part. That wrong turn didn't cause World War I, but it was the key that unlocked it. Europe at the time was already a powder keg of rigid military alliances and mobilization plans just waiting to go off. The assassination was the spark, and the system, the amplification, magnified that spark into a global firestorm because there was no way to de-escalate. Okay, for our last case, we're jumping to 1986. And this mistake didn't happen on a battlefield or a city street. It happened quietly, in a series of conference rooms in the days and hours leading up to the launch of the Space Shuttle Challenger. And the crazy thing is, this wasn't some mystery. The engineers knew. They knew for a fact that the cold weather on launch day could cause the O-ring seals on the rocket boosters to fail. They warned management, over and over and over again. The risk was known. It was documented, and it was passed right up the chain of command. This is just a perfect picture of our third condition: no correction. The pressure from the organization to launch on time, to avoid bad press, and to project an image of total confidence was just immense. The engineering reality that this thing was unsafe was treated like an annoying obstacle, not a critical fact. Dissent was shut down, and reversing course became totally organizationally impossible. The result was a nationally televised catastrophe. Just 73 seconds after liftoff, the shuttle broke apart, and 7 astronauts lost their lives. A heartbreaking public failure that was born from a system that actively chose to ignore its own safety experts. So, we've looked at an insult, a wrong turn, and an ignored warning. 3 totally different eras, completely different contexts, but that underlying pattern is just shockingly consistent. So why does this keep happening? Well, across all these stories, you see the same human flaws pop up again and again. You see overconfidence. You see people dismissing the experts. You see systems that actually reward you for ignoring bad news. And maybe the biggest one of all, once ego and prestige get involved, it becomes almost impossible to just say, you know what, we made a mistake, let's change course. These aren't technical problems, they're deeply human ones. And this right here, this is the most important takeaway from all of this. It's so easy to look back and point fingers, to blame individuals as evil or stupid. But the people involved, they often thought they were making perfectly rational choices based on the rules of the game they were playing. The real problem isn't the villains. It's the flawed systems that make these catastrophes not just possible, but sometimes even likely. So understanding this pattern isn't just a fun little history lesson. It's a tool. It's a lens we can use to look at our own world, right here, right now, and ask, where is the next expensive mistake brewing? Seriously, think about it. The science on something like climate change has been crystal clear for decades. That's our warning. Yet, our political and economic systems have created these incredibly powerful incentives to delay, to deny. The correction has been seen as too expensive or politically impossible. It's a huge, slow-motion mistake, but it fits the pattern perfectly, doesn't it? So that really leaves us with one final, and I think, crucial question. If history is truly shaped by ordinary people making what feel like reasonable choices inside flawed systems, what systems are we a part of today? And maybe more importantly, how do we start to fix them before the next small mistake becomes another really, really expensive one?